Hey, thank you for joining us on another edition of The Urban Therapist. I am your host, Eddie Jean Hall Jr., and joining me today, as always, is my good friend and the co-host of The Urban Therapist and also the producer of The Urban Therapist, Mr. Lewis Rhodes. How you doing today, Lou?
Hey, I'm doing great.
I'm glad to hear that you are doing great. Hey, listen, before we get started today, let me see if I can bag up and I can show this. Fisk University, representing my oldest son, Earl. Earl, you better be listening to the show, man. Got to do this. Earl's a graduate of Fisk, and man, proud of him. It is his alma mater. Can't say it was, and so he sent me this. So I represent. I knew you had the sound effects for it, man.
You didn't cue me, so I didn't know.
You just the man. You just come up with stuff. I just let you do your thing, man. So hey. So big shout out to my son, Dr. Earl Robert Lattimore, and to my son Demetrius Amici there in Ohio, son. Now Demetrius graduated from Oakwood University, but he loves Oakwood, but he is a huge Ohio State fan. So next time around, I'm gonna have to have on my Ohio State for him. But anyway, welcome everybody to the Urban Therapist. Lou, we got an interesting show today.
Oh, we have a timely show.
Yeah. We're doing something a little different from what we normally do, but I just feel as though it's important and it's appropriate, especially going into and celebrating. Now, I can't even say it's only because, and it's not only because we're celebrating Black History Month, but going into Black History Month when this happened, it just really broke my heart, you know. And so I was like, you know what, we've got to talk about this because this is one of those things where a lot of times people don't understand. And let me say this: I don't care what color you are, what your nationality is. We want everyone and anyone to feel welcome and open to listening to the urban therapist. But there are going to be times when we may deal with and talk about some topics that uh, may hit you, may make you think. And that's the whole objective of the show. We want you to think. So that's all I can say on that. And the reason I'm saying that, Lou, is because I remember when I was working in a private practice and I was sharing with one of my patients about my idea. This was before we started the Urban Therapist and the concept of the show. And he was like, so is it only, is it going to be like, are you talking like, and I got what he was saying. And I'm just going to be blunt. He was like, oh, are we specifically only targeting and talking to issues facing African Americans? And here's the thing: when we talk about any topic that we cover, it affects all of us. I don't care what race or nationality that you are, it affects all of us. So, whoever you are, I want you to feel comfortable listening to the show from a content perspective, but I want you to understand we're going to deal with some topics sometimes that you may not be comfortable with. And that could be if you're black, white, Hispanic, whatever nationality you may be. You can be male or female, gay or straight, married or single. We're going to talk about some things that you may not be comfortable with, but they need to be talked about.
Well,
So,
I was gonna say too that you know we're uncomfortable talking about it just the same. I mean, these things that we're gonna be covering, they happen. It's real,
right?
and we have to deal with it. And what I mean by that is not deal with it as in get over it, but we have to deal with it as in process it.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a level of uncomfortability in processing things, but that's just a part of what we do in this work.
Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that. So let me tell you all what we're going to talk about today. recently, if you haven't seen or haven't heard about it, there was another police involved killing of another African American male. This one took place in Memphis, Tennessee, and the young man's name is Tyre Nichols. Now, we'll get more into depth into the background of that story, but when I heard it, I was driving home one day from work, and I was listening to NPR, and I heard about what happened. And as I was listening to it, Lou, and I was listening to the names. Now, I'm not gonna lie. As soon as I heard it, I thought, "Oh, here we go again." This was another black man killed by a white police officer. That's what I thought.
Right.
Then I started listening to the names of the police officers. Now, people can say this is I'm stereotyping, but no, I've been around this barn for a long time, so you know, certain names ring a certain tone to me. And so when I started hearing the names of some of the police officers, I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Were these police officers black?" And I kept listening to the names. And at that time, when they were talking about, they did that, no pictures were out yet. No pictures were out yet. They were just giving the names. And so when I finally did start seeing the pictures of some of the officers, I was like, "Man, you have got to be kidding me." And when I saw these officers, and when I heard, can I share a little bit from one article, Lou, before we go into the
Yes.
show?
Yes.
Okay. Here's one article. It says this. It says Nichols was beaten after police stopped him for what they said was a traffic violation. Video released after pressure from the Nichols family. So we would not have even seen the video. We would have only had the police report of what they said happened. Video release after pressure from Nichols' family shows how officers holding him down and repeatedly punching, kicking, and striking him with a baton as he screamed for his mother.
Right.
Now, you can go online to YouTube or to Facebook to see the video, and a lot of news outlets are showing the video as well. So this is just a synopsis. Let me say this. Let me say right off the bat, I do not and I will never promote hating or hatred toward our law enforcement officers. I
Correct.
will not do that. And I will not ever promote or say or think or even want anybody to think I think all police officers are bad, are crooked, or don't care, because that is not true. Unfortunately, though, we have some men and women, just like in every profession, that don't do what they need to do, or for some reason they need to find a different occupation, a different job. And not being a police officer, but knowing police officers and knowing former law enforcement officers, I know theirs is a difficult job. Excuse me. It's one of those things where it's not what you see in the movies, and unless you actually do it or talk to people who have done it, you can't imagine what some of them have to go through. But the stuff that we've seen happening and it's been coming to light, that's
Right.
been going on for years, man, this is just sad. But what was really sad is the fact there were black officers doing this.
Right.
No
And
officer should treat any person of any color this way. But the fact these were black officers.
Right.
Man, that broke my heart.
And I agree with you in the messaging that you've already stated, which is, we're not here to criticize all police officers. We're not here to criticize police officers of any particular color. But what we're looking at is bad policing
Yes.
and officers who have bought into bad policing and thinking that that is an acceptable way to treat anyone. And that's the piece that has to change. When we talk about, it's been a long time coming and change is going to come, but this is what we are talking about, and as we're going to talk about today and unpack the idea that in every profession there are good actors and bad actors. I'm a former teacher, and our profession has been vilified in the same way when you talk about bad teachers doing things and getting huge publicity. But those of us who are in the profession know that the bad teachers that get publicity don't represent the entire lot.
Exactly.
Just like these police officers, what they did should not represent the entire group of police officers. But unfortunately, as you can see when you go look at that video, and that there were so many bystanders and so many who just allowed this to happen, there is still a cultural problem in our police departments. And that's the piece that I think the light is shining brightly on right now.
And the sad thing is, this is systemic. It's not isolated. It's it's a culture, and I appreciate what you just said. And again, just to reemphasize what Lewis said, what we're doing today and over the next few shows, we're dealing with the issue as it is. But I got to say something on this, Lou. To do this too, Lou. Something that came to my mind. How much of this also falls back on us as a community? See, that's something we need to look at and think about as well. How often do we encourage and teach and motivate our young men and women to even consider going into the field of law enforcement?
Mm.
You know, and how much do we even talk to, respect, and communicate with those who are in law enforcement, who are of our ethnicity, to find out how we can be more involved in our communities to help them do what they do? So I want to share a few slides with you because I wanted to talk about Tyre. But before we talk about well, in talking about Tyre, I can't say before, I want to look at a timeline because I did a little Google search because this has just been happening so much through the years, and again, it's been happening all along. I can't say this is just something that just started happening. It's been happening all along, but now with the onset of social media and with all the technology that's taking place, things can come out into the open quicker. So we're going to get to a timeline covering some of the more high profile incidents that have taken place over the last few years. And it's important for us to do this because easily, how easily do we forget? So let's get right to it. Okay, so I'm going to start with a couple of stats And then I've got some slides, some information. Now, for those of you who may be listening to us on Apple Podcasts and other venues, I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to depend on the slides. And for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, if you say, "Well, he's reading everything," yes, because we have some people that may be listening to us on a venue where they don't have the slides. Sadly, the trend of fatal police shootings in the United States seems to only be increasing, with a total of 1,096 civilians having been shot. Check this out: 225 of whom were black, and this was in 2022. We're just going to run through them, Lou. We'll do commentary as we kind of go along. As of January 25th, 2023, there were 79 fatal police shootings. In 2021, there were a total of 1,048 fatal shootings. Now, this is what's been reported. Additionally, the rate of fatal police shootings among Black Americans was much higher than that for any other ethnicity. Now, this is taken from Statista Research Department as of February 2nd, 2023. So this is recent. So again, that slide, let it sit right there for a second. The rate of fatal police shootings among Black Americans was much higher than that for any other ethnicity.
Right.
And we are not the major ethnicity in America.
Correct. So again, it's disproportionate.
It is disproportionate. Recent studies suggest that over the life course, to me, over your lifetime, Lou, and over my lifetime, about one in every 1,000 black men are killed by the police in the United States of America, making them 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men.
Mm.
Do y'all get that? Now, whether you are white, black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Chinese, Native American, I want us to understand this is something that is happening.
Right. And the biggest component of this is and to people who like to look at stats like this and say, well, if they don't want to die, don't do wrong. But we keep seeing examples of people of different colors who are committing violent crimes, and we find a way to capture them, to detain them, to bring them to justice intact, alive, kicking, and it's just not as true for black males.
Oh, gee, you don't happen to be talking about a recent case of a young man who was accused of killing several college students, and they brought him in safely.
I mean, you could just go back to several really high profile incidents where there were shooters and the police officers somehow were able to apprehend and bring a man with a AR-15 to justice without killing him. And when you look at the cases we're going to look at for our black men who died for much less
Much
and
less.
died in ways that they could have been brought to justice, because we're not saying don't bring them to justice. If there
Exactly.
is a crime, we're not saying that. But we're saying is that everyone should be able to make it to the police department alive. Everyone should be able to make it into jail alive, regardless of what's happening in the field, unless there is true life being threatened. But again, We've seen situations where life was being threatened and we were still able to detain the suspects if they were not black. So again,
See,
it's just that idea of, can we have an equal treatment for all who are at least being suspected?
see, and for those of you who think, oh, like Lewis said, oh, well, don't do the crime, or oh, no, you're blowing this out of proportion. This is not being blown out of proportion. These are stats, and like you said, Lou, you see stuff, you see this stuff on the news. All the Here's the crazy part: we only see or hear what's reported.
Mm-hmm.
Black women, look at this, are about 1.4 times more likely to be killed by police than are white women. So if this is the land of the free, home of the brave, all men are created equal. How is it that we are disproportionately at risk for being killed by the people? Our tax dollars pay to protect us. Lou, I need you to do me a favor because I forgot to set my timer, man.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have to let me know. We gonna Cause it's let me know when we gotta stop and we're gonna pick this one back up, okay?
Okay, I sent you a background chat. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. Nope.
No.
Okay. I was
No.
trying to cue you.
You was trying to cue me.
I
Hold
was
on, let me
trying
see
to
if
cue
this
you.
it. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, just keep that nearby.
I'm gonna keep that nearby. So if we're already this far in the show, we're only gonna be able to do a couple. We're gonna have to call it a wrap. Folks, listen, I apologize, but I was not I was not going to do the men and women we're about to talk about injustice by rushing through this. Okay? This is an article called Timeline of Black Americans Killed by Police. This is from 2014 to 2022. All right? Here we go.
And do you want to give credit to Darren Lynn?
Darren Lynn.
That's
He
correct.
published this on May 25th, 2022. Thanks, because I gotta remember we got folks that are not seeing the slides.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here we go. We're gonna share a couple, and then we're gonna call it a wrap, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna keep going on the next show. Okay. So here we go. First one, Eric Garner, July 17th, 2014. Eric Garner uttered the words, I remember, I can't breathe 11 times as a New York Police Department officer pinned him to the ground in New York City on suspicion of illegally selling cigarettes. Garner's death was ruled a homicide, but a grand jury decided not to prosecute the officer, who was later fired by the NYPD, while Garner's family received a $5.9 million out of court settlement. So this man was supposedly illegally selling cigarettes and wound up dying, being killed. They ruled it, the courts ruled it a homicide. But the jury decided not to prosecute.
Hmm.
And I know people may say, oh, well, look, his family, they got, look at what they got. They got, man, I don't care. There's no amount of money that makes up for somebody's life and for what that family went through and watching and learning how Garner died. You can't put a tab on that. Then in August 9th, 2014, Michael Brown, same year, Michael Brown was shot to death by a Ferguson, Missouri police officer, even though Brown held up his hands during the police foot chase and said, don't shoot. Now, I know somebody might say, well, he shouldn't have been running, but he had his hands up, so he wasn't reaching for a weapon.
Correct.
You were too tired to keep chasing him? A grand jury decided not to indict the officer, and that sparked civil unrest and protests in the community. And I remember that.
Yes. It doesn't even seem like it was 2014 when you look at how much has happened in our community and to our awareness. Like I'm remembering LeBron James and the other NBA players wearing the "Don't Shoot, Hands Up, Don't Shoot" shirts. As part of just bringing awareness. I remember that, and it doesn't seem like it's been what it's been now 8 years.
8 years.
Mm-hmm.
8 years. It doesn't seem like it. And the reason I wanted to go back and do this timeline is because it's like we talk about it, we had the issues, we have the emotional uprising, and then we go all the way back down,
Mm-hmm.
back to
It's a cycle.
normal. So listen, we're going to stop right here. Next week, we'll pick up Tamir Rice again in 2014. 2014 was a mad year. But again, folks, these are the ones that were reported and who that made, that made the scenes. There's so many others that happened and took place. We want to remind you that you can reach us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can find us now on Spotify, Apple. I'm sorry, Lou. I'm just, man, this topic. I'm gonna share some with you guys when we come back on the next show. When all this was happening, what was going on with me at the time, to let you know why this is so important to me. Listen, be careful. Talk to your family. Talk to your children about this. We got to talk to and support each other on this as well. And remember, if you are a police officer or law enforcement, hey, my brother, my sister, we love you. We love you. And if you're listening to this podcast, this broadcast, I want you to know we love you. But we want to let you know we're talking about this because it needs to be talked about. This is
So
Eddie Jean Hall Jr. Go ahead, Lou. I'm
yeah,
sorry. It
well,
was
I was
like
just gonna
something you
say
wanted to
before we
say.
close out, we always want our listeners to know where you can find us. If you see the banner at the top of our screen, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Obviously, if you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, we just want to let you know you're always able to reach out to us. But we thank you for tuning in. I know sometimes the topics are going to be heavy, but I think that there are things that we do need to talk about and not just sweep under the rug and not just pretend that they don't happen.
Exactly. And all of this, it affects, whether you believe it or not, it affects your mental health. It affects my mental health, and it affects our mental health as a community, as a people. And when I say our, I mean all of us as members of this human race. My name is Eddie Jean Hall Jr. You have been listening to The Urban Therapist, along with the co host and producer, Mr. Lewis Rhodes. We'll see you next week.